Chapter 1, Transfer to Another World. The moonlight casts a pale blue light over the silent bamboo forest. In its center stands the six-eyed demon Kokushibo. At his feet lies his twin brother, Tsugikuni Yoriichi, once hailed as the greatest swordsman, but now an aged corpse. Ugly. The words he spat out dissolved into the night air, without anyone hearing them. 60 years later, this man still appeared before him. His face was full of wrinkles, his limbs thin. But the flash of his sword as he lay dying was unmistakably as sharp as it had been in his prime. If Yoriichi had not died of old age before swinging that sword, his own head would have fallen to the ground by now. Kokushibo reaches for the demon sword he created from his own blade, which he carries at his waist. He picks up the flute that Yoriichi had held close to his chest until the end, and tries to smash it with his fingertips, but gives up. Instead, filled with rage and emptiness, he slashes his brother's corpse across the cross. With this, my obsession with Yoriichi disappeared. By thinking this way, Kokushibo tried to fill the void in his heart. Since then, more than 200 years have passed. Kokushibo continued to hone his swordsmanship with single-minded determination. As upper rank 1, he killed many pillars and defeated demons that challenged him to bloody battles. His swordsmanship reached a level that even the strongest swordsman in the Demon Slayer Corps could not touch, and his existence became a symbol of fear second only to Muzan Kibutsuji. But his heart was never satisfied. Ever since the day Yoriichi died, time has stood still for him. No matter how strong he becomes, no matter how many demons he devours to increase his power, there is no longer a worthy opponent with that same sun-like brilliance. The path to the pinnacle of martial arts has at some point become a hollow one, like wandering alone through an endless wilderness. That night, Kokushibo was alone in the deserted mountains, swinging his sword. The only sound that could be heard was the blade bathed in moonlight cutting through the air. More than training, it was a ritualistic act, an act to escape the emptiness that was eating away at his heart. That was when it happened. A strange noise echoed through the air, like a rustling sound. Kokushibo looked up with all six eyes and saw a gaping hole in the night sky, obscuring the moon. It pulsated red and black like a wound, giving off a strange presence that was completely different from the laws of this world. It was an unknown pressure he had never felt, even in his long life as a demon. His instincts were telling him of a crisis he had never experienced before. What is this? Is it some kind of blood demon art? He raised his guard to the highest level, breathing with total concentration to sharpen his condition. However, as if mocking his common sense, the dimensional rift began to distort the surrounding space with an incredible gravitational force. Trees bent from their roots, and rocks on the ground broke apart and were sucked in, swirling. Damn it! Kokushibo dug both feet deep into the ground, trying to stay in place. He unleashed a slash using the breath of the moon, but the crack did not waver, rather, its gravitational pull only increased. It was an absolute power that neither demonic power nor breathing techniques could overcome, it seemed to overturn the very laws of the world. There was no way to resist. The demon's strong body was pulled into the air like a scrap of paper. His vision turned upside down, and a sharp pain like flesh being sliced and bones being crushed hit his entire body. As his consciousness faded, the last thing that came to his mind was the image of his twin brother, whom he had supposedly killed over 200 years ago. That man shone like the sun. Yoriichi, you, even after death, are you still going to toy with me? That was the last thought he had in this world. Pitch black darkness covered all six of his eyes, and Kokushibo's consciousness was completely cut off. Chapter 2, Encounter at Capsule Corporation. My consciousness slowly returns, like surfacing from the depths of water. The first thing he felt was a soft elasticity. It wasn't earth or grass that touched his back, it supported his body with an unbelievable comfort, as if he were lying on a cloud. The excruciating pain that had hit his entire body when he was sucked into the dimensional rift, as if his flesh had been torn apart and his bones had shattered, had vanished without a trace as if by magic. It was a more fundamental healing process than the demon's incredible regenerative abilities. Kokushibo felt an indescribable sense of discomfort at how perfectly he was restored, as if nothing had ever happened to begin with. 6 pupils slowly open, pushing up heavy eyelids. What came into view was not the familiar night forest, but a seamless, smooth white ceiling. The design was simple, yet somehow sophisticated. The room was filled with warm, strong sunlight. When Kokushibo realized that the light did not burn his skin, he felt a shiver run through his body. Sunshine. Why? Why don't I turn to dust? Am I dead? No, this physical sensation, this surge of power, is undoubtedly that of a demon. So, is this sunlight a lie, or are the laws of this world itself wrong? Driven by doubt and astonishment, he slowly sat up. The bed sheets were smoother than silk, a strange feeling he had never felt before. Looking around the room, although there were few furnishings, none of them were remotely related to any technological system he was familiar with. Beyond the glass walls lay a garden with a lush green lawn so lush it hurt his eyes, dotted with strange buildings, some spherical and some angular. And in the sky, iron carriages, without horses or oxen, glided silently through the air. This place was unlike any part of Japan he had known, or indeed any country. It was at that moment. From downstairs came the sound of lively voices, like a festival, cheerful, upbeat music, and the fragrant smell of various ingredients being grilled. There were many signs of people. However, the quality of these signs was abnormal. Mixed in with those of weak, ordinary people were several individuals with clearly abnormally powerful ki. Each of them emitted an incredible pressure, enough to make the demon slayer core pillars he had faced up until then look like babies. Who are these people? This presence. Each and every one of them is like a natural disaster. It's as if they're a gathering of monsters that defy the laws of this world. Among them, there was one that felt particularly large and bright, yet bottomless, like the sun. Its opposite was a sharp, pointed, and refined pride. And then there was the feeling of an ancient tree, tranquil yet deeply refined. These feelings mixed together to form this strange space. Kokushibo quietly got off his bed. Letting his guard down to the maximum, he silently left the room and headed towards the source of the presence. He walked down a long corridor and came to a wide open door, and the sight that met his eyes made him stop in his tracks. Many humans had gathered in a vast garden, holding a feast. Colorful dishes were piled high, and the carefree laughter of children echoed throughout the area. The scene itself was a scene of peace, something he might have seen when he was human. However, the appearance of the people there made that peace seem strange. A blue-haired woman, a small man with a strange marking on his forehead, a large man with green skin and pointed ears, and 2 children with blonde hair standing up were all flying happily through the air. Kokushibo's 6 eyes locked onto one man who was particularly sharp and emitting a fierce ki, Vegeta, and then they locked onto the man beside him, Son Goku, who was munching on a meal while emitting a huge ki that seemed to envelop everything. What are these beings? Are they human? Or spirits? And why are they here? There was no sense of hostility. They didn't even seem to notice Kokushibo's presence. However, this strange space and the extraordinary people gathered there were beyond the comprehension of even Kokushibo, with his hundreds of years of experience. He hid in the shadow of a pillar and gently placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. Now that he had lost Yoriichi and his goal of reaching the pinnacle of martial arts, what should he do in this unknown world? A quiet murderous intent and deep confusion swirled within him. 6 eyes stared coldly at the powerful creatures of the garden, as if setting their sights on new prey. Yet no one had noticed his presence. Chapter 3, Overwhelming Difference in Power. The peaceful atmosphere of the party suddenly froze. The gazes of everyone present were immediately drawn to the strange being that slithered out from the shadow of a pillar. He had long black hair, was wearing an old-fashioned kimono, and what was most bizarre of all was the 6 eyes on his face. The cold, murderous intent that Kokushibo exuded instantly shattered the fun atmosphere of the party. "What about you?" The first to speak was a man in an orange gi, Son Goku. All cheerfulness disappeared from his expression, and the sharp gaze of a pure martial artist pierced Kokushibo. Vegeta, who was standing next to him, also crossed his arms and looked wary. "You are the ones who invited me to this strange place." Kokushibo's voice was low, like he was crawling along the ground. He slowly put his hand on his sword and lowered his hips. The energy of those before him was immeasurable. However, it would be a shame for a samurai to cower in fear at this point. It was only natural to first demonstrate his own strength and gauge the strength of his opponents. Moon breathing, first form, dark moon, evening palace. At the same time Kokushibo drew his sword, an invisible slash circled and attacked Goku and Bulma who were behind him. It was a lightning-fast flash that even the pillars of the Demon Slayer Corps could not see. However, slap! A dry sound rang out. With 2 fingers, Goku easily grasped the blade, the key to the slash. Kokushibo's 6 eyes widened, as if he was seeing something unbelievable. Wah! The single blow, into which he had poured all his strength, was stopped like child's play. No. It wasn't just stopped. The pressure transmitted from his fingertips felt as if he were being held in a steel vice. The sword creaked and groaned. "That's dangerous. Don't just suddenly attack with your sword." Goku frowned and said matter-of-factly. "Plus, your mentality is scaring everyone. Let's move." The next moment, Goku's figure seemed to disappear, and Kokushibo felt a slight impact on the back of his head. It was a chop. That was all it took for Kokushibo to lose consciousness for an instant. He suddenly realized he was no longer in the garden he had been in, but in an unfamiliar place, filled with reddish-brown rocks and wilderness. Goku was standing a short distance away, clapping his arms and looking in his direction. Teleportation? No, it's not. The speed is on a completely different level. I couldn't keep up with his understanding. Even Yoriichi's step forward felt lightning fast, but this man's movements were beyond reason. Here, we can fight without worrying about anyone. Goku grins. Now, try again. Your sword looks quite interesting. It was humiliating. He had given up everything for hundreds of years to master the way of the martial arts, and now he was being treated like a baby. His rage reached a boiling point, and his true demonic nature was revealed. Interesting, you say? Boy, you have just touched death. Moon breathing, 5th form, moon disaster vortex. Does it smell like burp? Countless swirling slashes are unleashed from the blade. It's a deadly technique that sweeps across a wide area, slicing everything it touches into pieces. The rocky mountain is torn apart like tofu, and the earth is gouged out. But Goku remained motionless in the center of the storm. Just before the swirl of slashes touched his body, an invisible wall of energy repelled it. Is it over already? There was even a hint of disappointment in Goku's voice. He slowly raised his right hand. A dazzling light condensed in his palm. The air trembled, and the earth shook. Kokushibo's instincts were ringing with even more fear than when Yoriichi had pointed his red sword at him. There was no way to block it. If it touched him, not even a speck would remain. Well, I'm in trouble. In a strained voice, Kokushibo announced his surrender. He sheathed his sword and knelt there. He no longer had the will to fight. His pride and hundreds of years of training were all meaningless in the face of this overwhelming power. It was the first complete defeat he had experienced since becoming a demon. What Yoriichi felt was jealousy and longing for Take's talent. However, what I felt about this man was an absolute disconnect, that we were on a different level as living beings. So this is the strong man of this world. As the six eyes gazed upon him, Goku's light of ki dispersed and he scratched his head in a slightly troubled manner. Chapter 4, The Drug That Turns You Back into a Human. When they returned to the Capsule Corporation gardens, the atmosphere surrounding Kokushibo was as tense as ever. Strong men like Vegeta and Piccolo were vigilantly watching his every move. However, the murderous intent from moments before had vanished from Kokushibo, and instead a deep emptiness dwelt in his six eyes. Well, that's why he won't be fighting anymore, Goku declared nonchalantly and returned to the party, leaving Kokushibo to just stand there. Hundreds of years of training. The pursuit of the pinnacle of martial arts, even to the point of abandoning his humanity. All of this was like child's play before that man. His own strength, which he had always measured by the absolute yardstick of Yoriichi, had no value in this world. This fact shook the very meaning of his existence to its very core. What is the meaning of being a demon? What is this power I have accumulated? What on earth was it all about? As his thoughts raced, one person approached him fearlessly. It was the blue-haired woman from before Bulma. With the inquisitive eyes of a scientist, she was staring at Kokushibo's monstrous form from head to toe. Who the hell are you? What's with those eyes? And didn't you say something about sunlight earlier? Bulma asks him questions one after the other, curiosity overpowering fear in her eyes. Kokushibo doesn't want to answer and chooses to remain silent. But Bulma doesn't seem to mind. So you're keeping quiet. But your physical abilities when you were fighting Son earlier were not those of an ordinary human. I'm really curious to know what your cellular tissues are like. She crossed her arms and clapped her hands as if she had just had an idea. Maybe you were originally human? Something happened to cause your body to change like this. It's like a kind of disease. An illness. He instinctively let out a low voice. This power is not something insignificant like an illness. It is an evolution that he has chosen to achieve in order to master the path of martial arts. He tried to argue back, but was at a loss for words. After all, that evolution had led to him being utterly defeated by Goku. Not missing Kokushibo's slight reaction, Bulma pressed on. I knew it. That's right. I don't know the cause, but I'm sure it's because my body structure is being rewritten at a cellular level. She confidently put her hands on her hips and said something outrageous. Then, can I put it back together for you? What? Kokushibo's six eyes widened in shock for the first time. Returning to human form. Such a thought had never crossed his mind since he became a demon. Losing his powers would mean a defeat more humiliating than death for him. What? What a stupid thing to say. I'm not stupid. I'm the world's greatest scientist. If I could just examine your cells a little, I might be able to create a medicine that will reverse the transformation. Bulma's words were filled with unwavering confidence. Vegeta, who was watching from afar, muttered in exasperation, "What nonsense!" However, Kokushibo's heart was deeply shaken. A drug that turns you back into a human. This was supposed to mean regressing to the weak. However, in his quest to become the strongest, he became a demon and was powerless against the humans of this world. So what was the point of continuing to be a demon? Kokushibo couldn't say anything in response. All he could do was stare back at the human woman standing before him, her chest puffed out with confidence, with six eyes. It was the first time that a crack appeared in the very foundation of his centuries-old beliefs. Chapter 5, Piccolo Daimao. A few days have passed since Bulma began developing the drug that would turn people back into humans. Kokushibo was given a room at Capsule Corporation, where he spent his time quietly. Ever since the incident with Goku, he hadn't drawn his sword or trained, and simply gazed out the window at the strange scenery. Now that he had lost sight of the path of the martial arts, he didn't know what to do. Just then, a man appeared before him. He had green skin, pointed ears, and a white turban on his head. It was Piccolo. Even during the party, he was the man who had been the most wary and quietly hostile towards Kokushibo. "What do you want?" Kokushibo asked in a low voice, his eyes fixed on the window. Piccolo entered the room, leaned his back against the wall, and crossed his arms. "You smell just like me used to." It was a quiet, yet strong voice. Kokushibo turned his gaze to Piccolo for the first time. 6 pairs of eyes met his sharp black ones. "The same smell, you say?" "Yes. My thirst for power, my arrogance that looked down on others, and loneliness. I was once known as the Demon King Piccolo, and I tried to rule the world through fear." Piccolo calmly began to speak. He explained that he was once an incarnation of evil who had separated from the god of earth. He plotted to conquer the world and fought a life-or-death battle with Goku. As his reincarnation, he gradually changed his mind as he trained Goku's son, Gohan. Kokushibo listened in silence. Great Demon King. World domination. Those words sent ripples through his mind. Even under Kibutsuji Musen's control, he had only ever thought about honing his martial arts skills. World domination had never been on his mind. "Why did you change? Did you have any regrets about giving up your power?" That was the question Kokushibo was most concerned about at the moment. Piccolo let out a sigh and looked off into the distance. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any regrets. But when I met Gohan, I learned the strength that comes from having someone to protect. The power you wield for someone else is far stronger, and warmer, than the power you wield just for yourself." Piccolo's words struck Kokushibo deeply in the heart. Someone to protect. Memories from long ago come back to him. His sickly wife, his newborn child. When he was human, he certainly had people he needed to protect. But he had abandoned them. To escape the fear of aging and death, he had abandoned everything under the pretext of mastering the way of the martial arts. It's rubbish. The ramblings of a spineless man who has been driven by emotion and has had his fangs pulled out. Kokushibo spat out these words. While they were directed at Piccolo, they were also words to convince himself, who was beginning to waver. Piccolo, as if seeing through his bluff, spoke quietly. "If that's what you think, that's fine. But remember, among the things you throw away, there may be something you truly wanted." With that, Piccolo silently left the room. Left alone, Kokushibo falls into silence once again. Piccolo's words eat away at his heart like a curse. Someone to protect. Something I truly wanted. Yoriichi. Are you using your strength to protect those you must protect? The question he had been turning a blind eye to for hundreds of years weighed heavily on his mind. Chapter 6, Gentle Strength. Ever since his conversation with Piccolo, Kokushibo's heart had been in the grip of a quiet storm. The power to wield for those who must be protected. Those words continued to shake his inner values. Then, one afternoon, he met a young man in Capsule Corporation's vast study. Son Gohan, a young man with a calm, scholarly appearance, was holding a thick book in one hand and, upon noticing Kokushibo's presence, seemed a little surprised, but smiled calmly. "Hello. You're the one my father brought." "Kokushibo-san, right." His appearance was not that of a warrior. However, Kokushibo's 6 eyes sensed the immeasurable potential hidden within Gohan. A quiet, yet unfathomable power, different in quality from that of Goku or Vegeta. "This man, is he the son of that boy?" Piccolo mentioned him. Kokushibo remained vigilant as he observed Gohan. Gohan ignored his gaze and continued in a gentle tone. "My father said your sword is amazing. I wanted to see it." "Nonsense. In front of you, it's like child's play." Kokushibo spat out this comment with a hint of self-mockery, and Gohan frowned in confusion. "That's not true. Strength comes in different forms for each person. Dad loves to fight, but I don't want to fight if I can help it. I want to live in peace with the people I care about. For that reason, I only fight when I need the power to protect. Kokushibo gasped at those words. I want to live peacefully with the people I care about. That pure wish. And the power wielded to achieve it. His presence strangely reminded him of the man Kokushibo hated more than anything else, and whom he longed for deep in his heart. Yes, Tsugikuni Yoriichi. That man also possessed the greatest power, but he never flaunted it. He wielded his sword as strong as the sun, only to protect his beloved wife and the people threatened by demons. His strength always coexisted with kindness. Why? Kokushibo found himself asking. You have such power, so why don't you aim for the top? Why don't you continue to seek strength? Isn't that just negligence on the part of a strong person? Those were the exact words he had wanted to ask Yoriichi. Gohan thought for a moment, then answered quietly. To me, true strength isn't about defeating someone. It's about protecting someone, supporting them, and living together with them. To me, studying and working for that purpose is what it means to become stronger. Gohan's eyes were crystal clear, and Kokushibo was taken aback by his honest gaze. He's just like Yoriichi. This man is the same kind of person as Yoriichi. He has overwhelming power, but he doesn't get carried away with it. He wishes for his own happiness and the happiness of others. And he uses that power to achieve that. This is gentle strength. After hundreds of years, Kokushibo felt as if he had finally touched a part of the place where his brother had stood. Yoriichi wasn't just strong. He was strong precisely because he was kind. When he realized this, a warm, yet terribly sad emotion welled up in Kokushibo's heart, something he had never felt before, not hatred or jealousy. The six eyes wavered slightly. The humanity I discarded. The form of happiness I turned my eyes away from. Now, this was vividly emerging through the figure of the young man before his eyes. 7th chapter, Saiyan Prince. Gohan's words, gentle strength, sent deep ripples through Kokushibo's heart. This was because they were the very embodiment of his younger brother, Yoriichi, whom he had turned a blind eye to for hundreds of years. Was the path of martial arts that he believed in truly correct? What lies at the end of that lonely peak? Unanswerable questions swirled within him. While he was lost in such thoughts, a man stood in front of him. Sharply raised eyebrows, arms crossed, and an insolent fighting spirit overflowing from his entire body. It was Vegeta, the Prince of the Saiyans. Ever since their first encounter at the party, he had been observing this unique swordsman. Hey, six-eyed demon. Vegeta's voice was low and challenging. That sword of yours is more than just a decoration. I'll test it. Follow me. Kokushibo frowned slightly at Goku's uncompromising attitude. This man's aura was sharp, and he sensed a kind of pride that was constantly on edge, unlike Goku's. And deep in his eyes, a look of longing that was very similar to his own flickered. Kokushibo silently stood up and followed Vegeta. He was led to a huge, metal-covered, dome-shaped room in the basement of Capsule Corp, the gravity chamber. When Vegeta operated the console, a low, gurgling sound was heard and a lead-like pressure was felt over his entire body. The gravity is 10 times that of Earth. Well, I'm sure even you can keep up. Vegeta said this while gently moving his body as if he was warming up. As he said, for Kokushibo, who possessed the body of a demon, this level of gravity only slowed his movements slightly. But that wasn't the problem. Let's go. Vegeta disappeared. The next moment, he appeared right next to Kokushibo and delivered a precise chop to his neck. Kokushibo caught the blow in the sheath of his sword, but the tremendous impact numbed his arm. He immediately jumped back and drew his sword. A circular slash came at Vegeta, but he dodged it by a hair's breadth and fired a barrage of purple energy bullets from his palms, a storm of light bullets each powerful enough to shatter even boulders. Go-no-type moon disaster whirlpool. Kokushibo unleashed a swirling slash from the blade of his sword, countering the key bullets. Explosive flames and shock waves shook the walls of the gravity chamber. The attack and defense between the two intensified, as they tested each other's strength. Kokushibo was astonished. Vegeta had not yet transformed into the golden form known as a Super Saiyan. Yet his speed, strength, and fighting technique all far surpassed those of the Demon Slayer Corps' pillars. There was no wasted movement whatsoever, and he possessed the refinement of a pure warrior whose sole purpose was to defeat his enemies. And above all, the tenacity that permeates his fighting style. Always striving to improve, his desire to never be satisfied. It was exactly the same as his former self, who gave up everything to master the way of the martial arts. Meanwhile, Vegeta was also secretly amazed at Kokushibo's swordsmanship. Invisible slashes, ever-changing sword strokes. This was not power or speed, it was a martial art honed through skill and experience. But at the same time, its limitations were also apparent. Is that all? Vegeta deflects Kokushibo's slash and closes the distance in one go. The thirst in your eyes can't be anything like that. Show me all of you. Those words pierced the depths of Kokushibo's heart. That's right, it's not like this. What he wanted was not a battle of this magnitude. Yoriichi, Yoriichi, Yoriichi. He wanted the power to fight on equal terms with that man. Shut up. As Kokushibo cried out, his rage spread through the sword. The blade he gripped trembled eerily and began to wriggle like a living thing. The blade stretched strangely, transforming into a sinister shape. Countless new blades sprouted from the extended blade, stretching out in all directions like spider legs. A pattern resembling pulsating veins appeared on the surface of the blade, as if Kokushibo's demonic blood was flowing through it. Along with Kokushibo's cry, his demonic energy explodes. Hand no type Tsukairyu Wabi. A huge, dragon-like slash approached Vegeta, intending to sweep away the gravity chamber. Vegeta smiled fearlessly and thrust both hands forward. Gallic Gun. A huge purple flash collided with the dragon slash. A tremendous torrent of energy creaked through the space, and the two forces clashed, causing a huge explosion. After the smoke cleared, the two men took some distance and caught their breath. The battle was over. But their souls had certainly connected in this brief exchange. The gravity chamber's power stops and silence descends. Vegeta was the first to speak. You seem to be yearning for something. Your eyes are the same as mine once were. His words were a question, yet a firm statement. Kokushibo sheathed his sword and made no reply. Taking his silence as confirmation, Vegeta leaned his back against the wall and began to speak with a hint of self-deprecation. I was born as a Saiyan prince. It was natural that I would always be number one. But before me was always that low-ranking warrior, Kakarot. No matter how much I trained, even to the point of vomiting blood, he was always one step ahead of me. I couldn't forgive him. In order to be number one, I gave up everything and sought only power. Even my family and pride. To Kokushibo, this monologue was like a retelling of half his life. His younger brother, Yoriichi, was born as the strongest swordsman. That man was always standing in his way. But Vegeta continued. Here, I gained a family. I now have something to protect. At first, I thought it was just a pointless shackle, but now I'm different. When I fight for those I must protect, I am able to surpass my own limits. The same is true for Kakarot. The source of his strength lies there. It was the same thing Piccolo and Gohan had said. But Vegeta, who knew the suffering of his fellow No-2, said it more deeply and sharply than anyone else's words, piercing Kokushibo's soul. Who is the person you are infatuated with? Vegeta's question echoed in the silence. The image of his younger brother, shining like the sun, appeared clearly in Kokushibo's 6 eyes. He bit his lip and didn't reply. Seeing this, Vegeta understood everything. Humph. Do your best to struggle. Vegeta said, heading towards the exit of the gravity chamber. If you remain trapped by the ghosts of your past, you will never be able to move forward. Just like I am now. The last words sounded as if he was talking to himself. Left alone in the dimly lit gravity chamber, Kokushibo clenched his fists tightly. Vegeta, a man with a solitary soul, was staring at the same hell as him, yet he was determined to walk a different path. Ghosts of the past. The true nature of one's attachments, and the possibility of a way out of them. Seeing his own image reflected in the mirror that was Vegeta shook Kokushibo's inner self even more violently. Chapter 8, Allies. The resonation of his soul with Vegeta, a man who was also imprisoned by the ghost of the strongest person, left a deep mark on Kokushibo's heart. His belief that the pinnacle of martial arts is the only thing of value wavered, and he could not help but think about the meaning of what he had thrown away. The expression on Vegeta's face at that time is burned into his mind and won't go away. When he spoke of his complicated feelings towards Kakarot, his face showed a mixture of anguish, resignation, and a hint of relief. It was all too similar to the feelings Kokushibo had towards Yoriichi. A thirst for power, complicated feelings towards his younger brother, and loneliness. Vegeta was walking the same path as himself. But the crucial difference was that he now had friends walking alongside him. One day, Kokushibo spots some people training with Goku in the courtyard of Capsule Corporation. Tien Shinyan, who has a three-eyed pattern on his forehead, and Krillin, who is small but well-trained. While they don't possess the extraordinary strength of Goku or Vegeta, their every move is refined to the utmost. The sunlight streams in slantingly in the afternoon courtyard. The two men continue to practice their forms, in perfect unison, even as they sweat. Their movements are efficient and the culmination of techniques honed through years of training. To Kokushibo, it is as if he can see every single one of their movements. They may not be perfect, but their determination to master their own way is evident in their very being. As the two finished their training and wiped the sweat from their brows, Kokushibo approached them unknowingly. His footsteps were silent, born of his demonic instincts, but there was no murderous intent in them. Rather, he walked as if drawn by a mysterious gravitational pull, as if seeking something. Krillin sensed something strange about him and tensed up for a moment, but then quickly put on a kind smile. His warrior instincts sensed danger, but he instantly determined that he meant no hostility. "Hey, Kokushibo-san. Have you gotten used to this world a little?" Kokushibo was slightly shaken by the friendly voice. In the hundreds of years he had lived as a demon, he had never been spoken to in such a friendly manner. All of Muzen's demon subordinates gazed upon him with fear and awe. Humans were nothing more than food for them. Kokushibo didn't reply, but simply stared at the two men. His 6 eyes followed their movements as if assessing prey, but there was no murderous intent there. Shinshinyan observed him with quiet eyes. This three-eyed man seemed careful to see through the other person's true nature rather than exchange superficial words. There was a long silence. The wind swayed the trees in the courtyard, and the only sound that could be heard was the rustling of leaves. Kokushibo's long hair also swayed slightly in the wind. "You guys, why are you with those men?" When the question was finally forced out, Krillin looked puzzled, as if he was confused by being asked something that was so obvious. "You mean with Goku and the others?" "Well, we're friends after all." "Friends, you say?" Kokushibo did not understand the meaning of those words. In the demon world, the relationship with one's comrades was nothing more than one of using and being used. Under Muzen's absolute rule at the top, other demons were equal pawns, and sometimes even enemies who ate each other. Even the upper-ranked demons kept each other in check, competing for Muzen's favor. Kokushibo himself reigned as upper rank one, but it was nothing more than a lonely throne. He was feared by the other upper ranks, and sometimes envied, but he was never understood. There was no warmth, no trust, nothing. Right? We were enemies in the past. Krillin looked up at the sky with a nostalgic look on his face, a nostalgia for the distant past coexisting with a deep satisfaction for the present. We've overcome many life-threatening situations together and helped each other out. Goku is my best friend, my goal, and a teammate I'm proud of. Because of him, I want to become even stronger. There was not a trace of guilt in his words. Krillin, who is nowhere near Goku's fighting strength, still adores Goku and is proud of him. Kokushibo was taken aback by this purity. It is natural for the weak to obey the strong, but this was not such a simple hierarchical relationship. Tenshinhan, who was listening next to him, also nodded quietly. It's the same for me. I once walked a twisted path, but when I met my grandchildren, I learned what the true path of the martial arts is. I work hard with my friends and improve each other. That is my training. There was a quiet conviction in Tenshinhan's voice. It seemed he too had had some doubts in the past. But now he exuded unwavering conviction. It was a different strength from the pinnacle of martial arts that Kokushibo had always sought, but it certainly existed. The true path of martial arts. Kokushibo muttered, and Tenshinhan's three-eyed head stared intently at him. Yes. In the past, I thought strength meant overwhelming others. But I realized that true strength comes from protecting your allies and growing together with them. There is a limit to the strength you can achieve alone, but with your allies, you can surpass that limit. Compete and improve each other. Those words pierced Kokushibo's mind like a bolt of lightning. Yoriichi. Perhaps that's how I wanted to be with you. Feelings that had been sealed away began to overflow from the depths of his memory. The days when they swung their swords together as children. Yoriichi's simple smile, and the way he fondly called him big brother. Back then, he was genuinely happy to grow stronger alongside his younger brother. However, when his younger brother's overwhelming talent became clear, his pure joy transformed into jealousy. His younger brother created the breath of the sun and surpassed him in just one night. For Kokushibo, his younger brother was both an object of admiration and a source of despair that he could never reach. His jealousy of his younger brother's overwhelming talent eventually turned to hatred, eating away at his heart. It was he who closed off the path of honing and improving their skills together. If only he had honestly acknowledged his brother's talent and chosen to walk the path together. Seeing him like that, Krillin must have sensed something, as his expression became serious, a little different from his usual carefree self. Did you also lose someone important to you, Kokushibo-san? At that question, Kokushibo's six eyes widened slightly. Why do you think so? I don't know why, but I once lost a precious friend. My eyes then and Kokushibo's now are a little similar. There was deep empathy in Krillin's voice, he too was a man who knew the pain of loss. But did you know? While it's important to remember those we've lost, it's just as important to cherish the people we have here now. You can't change the past, but you can change the future. Those words resonated deeply in Kokushibo's heart. His feelings for Yoriichi, the lost bond between his brothers, and the lonely path he had walked as a demon, all of these things swirled in his head. It's good to have friends. Krillin seemed to have read Kokushibo's complicated expression and scratched his head in a slightly embarrassed manner. The setting sun shone on his shaved head, making droplets of sweat glisten. If you have friends, you can overcome things you can't do alone. You support each other when times are tough, and laugh together when times are happy. I think that's the strongest power. The strongest power. This small man declared that it wasn't Goku's overwhelming fighting power or Vegeta's pride that was the strongest thing, but the bonds with friends. He spoke of a strength that he never possessed, even though it was someone who was clearly inferior to him in terms of fighting power. Even we can't match Goku and Vegeta in terms of fighting power. But that doesn't mean we're worthless. Each of us has our own role to play, and our own strengths. I can support my comrades in my own way. Tenshinhan added with a nod. Strength doesn't necessarily mean accomplishing everything alone. Sometimes you are supported, and sometimes you support others. In this cycle, everyone grows. That is the path we walk. The words that Muzan once told him come back to Kokushibo's mind. You are my blood family, Muzan said. But it was a false bond. Ruled by fear, an absolute class system, and ultimately a fate of being cast away. To Muzan, the demons were nothing more than disposable tools. But the bond between the men here is different. They respect and support each other as equals. It's not the strong who protect the weak, but each of them fulfilling their own role, and as a whole they become stronger. I don't understand. When Kokushibo finally spoke, Krillin gave a wry smile. I was the same at first. When I was training under Master Mutant Roshi, I couldn't help but envy Goku. He was stronger than me, more talented, and loved by everyone. Krillin's eyes held thoughts of the distant past. But as we trained together, fought together, and grew together, I realized that he was an irreplaceable friend before he was a competitor. Without him, I wouldn't be who I am today. At that moment, the smile of Yoriichi as a child flashed through Kokushibo's mind. That innocent smile as he said, "Brother, let's become stronger together." What did he answer then? He was sure he had simply nodded. He had not been able to accept his younger brother's pure feelings honestly. Kokushibo said nothing, but in his heart he felt that something that had been frozen for hundreds of years was definitely beginning to thaw. At that moment, Goku, who had just finished his training, came into the courtyard. Hey everyone! That was a great training session. With his usual carefree smile on his face, Goku notices Kokushibo's presence. Oh, Kokushibo is here too. How about we train together next time? Kokushibo was astonished by the invitation. He was a demon, a monster that had eaten humans. And yet, without any hesitation, this man said, let's train together. I'm a demon. Yeah, I know, Goku replied matter-of-factly. But you're not trying to hurt your friends right now, are you? So let's get stronger together. Kokushibo is left speechless by this overly simple logic. To this man, differences of race and past sins are trivial matters. All that matters is the present. Strength does not only lie in the lonely path to the summit. There is a strength you never knew you had when you support each other and walk the path together. Krillin stood up and held out his hand in front of Kokushibo. At first, we were also desperately trying to keep up with Goku. But before we knew it, we realized that we weren't just following him, we were walking together. Would you like to walk with us, Kokushibo-san? The hands were small and covered in scars. They were by no means beautiful, but they bore the testament of having supported and been supported by comrades. They were warm hands, the kind that had likely shook hands countless times, having survived countless battles together. Kokushibo continued to stare at the hand. If he were to take that hand, what would change? Would his hundreds of years of loneliness end? Would his feelings for Yoriichi disappear? Yoriichi, was I wrong? In his mind, he asks his dead brother, if Yoriichi were alive, what would he have said? He would surely have said with that gentle smile, do as you please, big brother. For the first time, he truly regretted his life as a demon, and the choices he had made when he was human. His 6 eyes were cast down, and his tightly clenched fists were trembling slightly. The wind died down, and silence returned to the courtyard. But the silence was no longer lonely. There was a warm space created by the 3 men. Give me time. Kokushibo's voice was hoarse. Of course, Tien Shinyan replied quietly. There's no need to rush. We're here. Those words made Kokushibo's heart tighten. We are here. Such simple, yet powerful words. The sun had completely set, and darkness had fallen over the courtyard. The three of them began to walk towards the building at their own pace, but Kokushibo was the only one who remained standing there. He still felt the warmth of the outstretched hand, a tender and bittersweet sensation that reminded him of all he had lost. I wonder if it's still too late for me. The starry sky spread overhead, and the moon shone on Kokushibo's lonely silhouette. But tonight, the silhouette looked fainter than usual, as if it were enveloped in someone's light. Chapter 9, To Humanity. Some time has passed since Kokushibo came to this other world. His interactions with the Z warriors have brought about a definite change in his soul, which had been frozen for hundreds of years. At first, he felt nothing but weariness and confusion. Why would the humans of this world accept him, a demon? Why would they speak to him so kindly, a man-eating monster? He couldn't understand the reasons. However, the days he spent with them gradually began to open up cracks in Kokushibo's tightly closed heart. His conversation with Piccolo gave him a new perspective on the strength of those who must be protected. The Green Warrior was once feared as the incarnation of evil, but now he protects Gohan with a deeper love than anyone else. The source of this change was the power of the emotion of love. Strength is born from the desire to protect someone. Piccolo's words indicated a fundamentally different form of strength from the pinnacle of martial arts that Kokushibo had long sought. His encounter with Gohan had an even deeper impact. Despite possessing overwhelming hidden potential, the boy did not boast of it, instead loving learning and peace. This boy allowed him to touch the source of the gentle strength of Yoriichi, the younger brother he hated and yearned for the most. Gohan's hesitation to use his power, yet his determination to stand up to protect those he cares about, was the very image of the ideal warrior that Yoriichi embodied. I don't like fighting, but when there's something I need to protect, I'll fight with all my might. Gohan's words were deeply engraved in Kokushibo's heart. He didn't seek power for its own sake, but rather became strong because he had a reason for needing power. His purity made Kokushibo's heart ache many times. And his fierce sparring with Vegeta resonated with the souls of those both held captive by the ghost of the strongest, and like a mirror, reflected the true nature of his own obsession. The Saiyan Prince was once a lone warrior. But now he has a loving family. Bulma, Trunks, and Bra are the ones who guide him to true strength. There was a time when defeating Kakarot was everything to me, Vegeta said. But now it's different. I'm walking my own path. You too, have your own path. Those words resonated deep in Kokushibo's heart. Krillin and Tien Shinyan's conversation taught him the importance of bonds with friends. Even though they may be inferior in fighting ability, they have a firm place in the world and support each other. That warmth shone brightly to Kokushibo, who stood alone at the top of the upper rank 1 hierarchy. I know the limits of becoming strong alone. Tien Shinyan's quiet voice comes back to memory. But with our allies, we can overcome those limits. That's our strength. His belief that the pinnacle of martial arts is the only thing worth achieving is shaken to its core. His pursuit of power alone leaves him with an unfillable loneliness and emptiness. However, the powerful men of this world find true strength in the humanity he supposedly abandoned, the bonds with his comrades and the people he must protect. Every night, Kokushibo reminisces alone. Memories from when he was human. The warmth of his wife's hands, the laughter of his children, and the pure gaze of his younger brother, Yoriichi. He has discarded all of these in the name of strength. But was that really the right path? The days he spent in the Capsule Corporation gardens made him think about many things: Goku's love for his family, Vegeta's transformation, Piccolo's kindness, Gohan's purity, and the warmth of everyone who accepted him. Was I wrong? The question was no longer a doubt, but was turning into a painful certainty. One afternoon, Bulma came running out of the lab excitedly, holding a test tube of pale purple liquid in her hand. Her expression was a mixture of accomplishment after completing a long period of research, and nervousness. Kokushibo was alone in the courtyard, meditating quietly. It was a habit he had acquired over the past few months. It was a time of silence, in which he tried to suppress his demonic instincts and recall the emotions of his human days. The rustling of the trees, the sound of the wind, the chirping of the birds. Listening to these sounds of nature, he continued to have a dialogue with his own mind. Bulma held it out in front of him. "I did it, Kokushibo. It's finally finished." Bulma proudly held up the test tube and puffed out her chest with pride. At her words, Goku, who was training nearby, Gohan, who was reading, and even Piccolo and Vegeta, who were meditating in the shade of a tree, gathered around. Everyone had likely expected this moment to come someday. But when it actually did arrive, everyone looked nervous. This is a drug that will reverse the abnormal transformation of your cells and return them to the normal state they were in when you were human. It's called Humanize X. Bulma's declaration caused the atmosphere to tense up for a moment. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Kokushibo and the test tube in his palm. Goku stares at the medicine with interest, but with a worried look on his face. "Are you sure you're okay, Bulma?" "Of course. I've run the simulations countless times, and the tests on Kokushibo's cell samples were flawless." However, Bulma hesitated for a moment before continuing. "The transformation process will be quite painful, as it's a complete restructuring at a cellular level," Piccolo said quietly, crossing his arms. "Still, if that's your choice, we'll support you, Kokushibo," Vegeta said, staring sharply at Kokushibo. If you think that returning to human form is the path to strength, then that's one choice. But I wouldn't care if you regret it." Gohan gazed at him with a gentle gaze. "No matter what you choose, we're on your side, Kokushibo-san." Kokushibo gazed silently with all six eyes at the test tube Bulma handed him. The purple liquid swaying on the other side of the glass looked like a drop of destiny, reflecting his own past and future. "If you drink this, the demon's power will be lost." His strong body that had allowed him to survive for over hundreds of years, his unique constitution that allowed him to overcome sunlight, and the overwhelming physical strength that allowed him to wield the breath of the moon all vanish. His regenerative abilities, superhuman senses, and above all, his abhorrent craving for human flesh all become a thing of the past. All that remains are mere humans. Tsugikuni Iwakatsu is a fragile being, burdened with the inescapable fate of aging, illness, and death that he once abandoned. A fleeting life that lives within a limited time and will eventually return to the earth. If it were him in the past, he would have smashed the potion without hesitation and mocked Bulma for suggesting it. To him, being a demon was the only solution to mastering the path of the martial arts, and his humanity was merely a shackle that got in the way of that path. However, the experiences I have had over the past few months have completely overturned that belief. But right now, he was deeply confused. No, it wasn't confusion. He could see the path to certainty, but he was overwhelmed by the gravity of it all. Back to human. The sound of the words no longer implied a regression to weakness. Goku and Vegeta have the power to shatter even a star. It cannot even be compared to the power of a demon. But they are not demons. Though they are a warrior race known as the Saiyans, they are proud warriors who love their families, cherish their comrades, and fight for justice. They gain their strength by fighting for those they must protect and by competing with their rivals. The same can be said for Piccolo. Though he is a Namekian alien, his love for Gohan is deeper than anyone else's. Earthlings like Krillin and Tien Shinyan also cherish every moment of their lives and nurture bonds with their friends, precisely because their lives are limited. So what's the point of continuing to be a demon? The power he had obtained in order to escape his feelings of inferiority towards Yoriichi had, in the end, only driven him into a lonely dead end. He should have been granted eternal time, but that time was filled with emptiness. The hundreds of years he had spent under Muzin's command had brought him no true growth, no deep bonds, and no true satisfaction. And more than anything, the short time he had spent in this other world had been far more fulfilling than his hundreds of years as a demon. He knew what that meant. Memories from long ago came vividly back to Kokushibo's mind. His wife's ill hands were thin and emaciated. But when they touched his cheek, they were so warm. "Honey, don't push yourself too hard," she said with a gentle smile. Even when he was immersed in his sword training and had stopped paying attention to his family, she showered him with unwavering love. Your fingers held in your newborn child's tiny hand. That warmth and that helpless cry. The indescribable joy and sense of responsibility you felt when you became a father for the first time. That pure feeling you had as you gazed upon your child's sleeping face and vowed to yourself, "I must protect this child." And the sight of his twin brother, before they went their separate ways, simply looking straight at him. That innocent smile as he said, "Brother, let's become stronger together." The simple happiness of the days when the two of them watched the sunset side by side, before he became jealous of Yoriichi's talent. He had discarded all of these in the name of the noble cause of martial arts. Emotions get in the way of becoming stronger. Human weaknesses are an obstacle to the path of martial arts. He told himself this, and one by one he let go of the things he loved. But now I understand. Those were the very sources of true strength. The desire to protect those we love gives us the strength to transcend our limits. The warriors of this world have shown this with their very own examples. If I could go back in time. It's an impossible wish. Lost time cannot be returned, and the people he loves are no longer in this world. But this medicine has given him a new option. Even if he can't get back what he's lost, it gives him the chance to right his wrongs and die as a human being. No matter how little time we have left, if we can live it with pride as human beings, if we can build true bonds with the friends we meet in this world. Kokushibo slowly raised his head. Goku's pure gaze. He says nothing, just waits for Kokushibo's decision. His eyes are filled with the determination to accept whatever choice he makes. Gohan's gentle gaze. The boy's eyes are filled with compassion. It's as if he's sending a silent message that he understands Kokushibo's anguish and will support him no matter what path he chooses. Piccolo's calm gaze. He was once the embodiment of evil, so he deeply understands the meaning of change. His gaze is filled with the empathy of someone who has walked the same path. And then there was Vegeta's piercing gaze, which seemed to see through everything. The prince's eyes held the understanding of a warrior who had walked the same path as Vegeta. He too knew how difficult it was to change, but also the value of doing so. No one says anything. They just wait for his decision. This warmed Kokushibo's heart. No one was rushing him into making a choice, they were just quietly watching over him. He felt that the trust he had built over the past few months was finally coming to fruition. "What are you going to do, Kokushibo? Are you going to drink it?" Finally, Goku spoke. His question carried a tone of pure respect for Kokushibo's decision. He was neither good nor evil, but was listening to Kokushibo's will as a friend. Kokushibo took a deep breath and resolved to once again release the human heart that he had sealed away for hundreds of years. His voice was trembling slightly. "I want to die as a human being." As he spoke, a single tear fell from Kokushibo's eye. It was the first tear he had shed since becoming a demon, born from a human heart. "Yoriichi. I was wrong. The strength you embodied was the true path of the martial arts. It may be too late, but I too would like to walk that path." Kokushibo made up his mind. He gently took the test tube from Bulma's hand. His movements were quiet and solemn, as if he were attending a sacred ceremony. The test tube was light in weight, but the weight of the meaning contained within it was immeasurable. Bulma, thank you for making this potion. Kokushibo's voice was filled with heartfelt gratitude. Of course. Bulma tried to act tough, but her eyes were slightly moist. Hey, Kokushibo. Vegeta spoke up. Even if you turn back into a human, you'll still be training, right? At those words, Kokushibo smiled slightly. Yes. This time, I'll seek true strength. That's it? Vegeta also had a rare look of satisfaction on his face. Piccolo added quietly. Even when you turn back into a human, you're still one of us. Don't forget that. Gohan nodded as well. Yes. We are always with you, Kokushibo-san. Then Goku said with his usual carefree smile. Okay. Then let's train together, Iwakatsu. At that moment, Kokushibo realized that Goku had called him by his real human name, not his demon name. Thank you, Son Goku. With these short, heartfelt words, Kokushibo removed the stopper from the test tube. The pale purple steam rising from inside illuminated his face. He looked up at the sky just once, imagining Yoriichi's figure beyond the blue sky. Brother, please walk the right path. The words his brother once told him come back to him. This time, he must live up to those words. Kokushibo took a gulp of the liquid inside. The next moment, an unimaginable pain ran through his entire body. The heat was as scorching as if I had swallowed lava, burning away my internal organs, blood vessels, and every single cell in my body. A pain I had never experienced before washed over me like waves. Guh. Unable to bear it, he collapsed to his knees and writhed on the ground. His bones creaked and he felt as if his flesh was being torn apart. The demon cells that had made up his body for over hundreds of years had their existence denied, and he screamed as they were forcibly rewritten. Its 6 pupils converged as if melting, and the ugly patterns carved into its forehead and chin disappeared like a heat haze. Its sharp claws became rounded, and its bloodthirsty fangs turned into human teeth. It was the death and rebirth of existence itself. The Z warriors watched with bated breath as he underwent this dramatic transformation. While they all wanted to ease his pain, they all understood that they must not interfere with this transformation. Even as his consciousness grew hazy, Gancho had a clear feeling. As his demonic powers were disappearing, the cold, dark curse that had taken root deep in his heart, his jealousy and inferiority complex towards Yoriichi, and the loneliness that comes with being the strongest, was slowly being dissolved. At the same time, human emotions that he had long suppressed began to resurface. Love, cherishing, and the nobility of sacrificing oneself for something. All of these things fill his heart. And in the depths of the darkness, he sensed a warm light, the strong yet gentle heartbeat of the human Tsugikuni Iwakatsu. When the transformation was complete, a warrior lay collapsed, his monstrous demon form gone, his gentle human face illuminated by the sunlight. Tsugikuni Iwakatsu has finally returned. Chapter 10, A New Path. 3 days have passed since the transformation was complete. Tsugikuni Gancho, no longer Kokushibo, he was lying on a bed in the Capsule Corporation infirmary, staring at the ceiling. His body, now back to human, was weaker than expected, and due to the after effects of the drastic change, the doctor had told him to rest for a while. However, his heart was complicated. While he felt relief at hearing a human heartbeat for the first time in hundreds of years, his regular breathing, and the disappearance of his craving for human flesh, he couldn't deny the sense of loss he felt at the loss of his overwhelming power. And above all, his feelings for Yoriichi still swirled deep in his heart. Yoriichi. I have returned to being human, but my feelings for you have not changed. What on earth are these feelings? How are you? There was a knock on the door and Piccolo came into the room. The Green Warrior placed a chair next to Iwakatsu's bedside and sat down. My body has become weaker, but my mind is complicated. Gancho tried to get up, but Piccolo stopped him. Don't push yourself just yet. Human bodies aren't as strong as demons. Piccolo, did I really make the right choice? Piccolo quietly studied Iwakitsu's expression. Do you regret it? But what can I really do with this powerless body? Are you still trying to compete with ghosts? Piccolo's voice took on a slight stern tone. Is the reason you turned back into a human ultimately to surpass him? Iwakitsu couldn't answer. He didn't know himself. Was his feeling for Yoriichi love, admiration, or still jealousy? At that moment, the door to the hospital room slammed open and Goku peeked in. Hey, Iwakitsu. Can you move now? Grandson, we've been told to stay still. Piccolo scolds him, but Goku doesn't seem to mind. But you seem to be in good spirits. Well, why don't we start with some light training? Iwakitsu's eyes lit up. Training, that's right. I want to know how far I can go with this body. Dash. A week later, Iwakitsu had fully recovered and finally began full-scale training with the Z Warriors. A vast training ground behind Capsule Corporation. It was a state-of-the-art training facility, fully equipped with gravity devices. However, Iwakitsu decided to start by checking the basic operation under normal gravity. Okay, let's check the type first. Goku takes a stance. Show us Gancho's moon breathing technique. Gancho took a deep breath and readied his sword. Now that he was human again, his movements were not as superhuman as before, but his years of experience were still there. The sword was swung down, creating a crescent-shaped slash. However, compared to when he was a demon, the power of the slash was clearly weaker. There were fewer slashes, and the range was shorter. Iwakitsu's expression clouded over. I guess this is the limit for the human body. Goku thought, putting his hand to his chin. The power has gone down, but somehow the technique has become more beautiful. Vegeta was also observing, his arms crossed. The precision of my techniques has improved. This is because I've eliminated unnecessary strain. However, it seems you're not convinced. I became a demon in order to surpass Yoriichi. But now that I've returned to being human, that goal feels even more distant. Tien Shinyan said quietly, are you still thinking about surpassing him? Iwakitsu put down his sword and looked at his hands. I don't know. But this inferiority complex won't go away. Even if I return to being human, I will still be me. For the next few days, Gancho's training did not produce the results he had hoped for. He was hindered by the limits of the human body and was unable to regain his former strength. Damn it! On the night after finishing his training, Iwakitsu continued swinging his sword alone. At this rate, you can't even come close to Yoriichi. At that moment, Vegeta appeared. Are you still doing it? Vegeta. I wonder why I turned back into a human. With this level of power. Vegeta sneered, you're fundamentally wrong. What? You lament the loss of your power, but you simply do not yet know your true power. Vegeta created a small energy sphere in his palm. Look at this. This is Ki. Iwakitsu gazed at the glowing sphere with interest. Ki is life energy. All living things possess it, but most do not know how to use it. However, with proper training, even humans can gain incredible power. Air. Your breathing techniques control your Ki unconsciously. But if you could do it consciously. The energy in Vegeta's hands grew. It can easily transcend human limitations. A ray of hope appeared in Iwakitsu's eyes. From the next day, Iwakitsu's training changed radically. Goku taught him the basics of Ki control. Ki is the energy that flows through your body. It's hard to feel at first, but you'll get used to it soon. Iwakitsu sat in a meditative position and focused his attention on the flow of blood within his body. He could clearly feel it. He could sense another flow, different from the blood vessels, circulating throughout his body. Is this ki? That's right. Now, try concentrating it in your palm. Ganshung concentrated and tried to gather the energy in his body into his right hand. At first, he couldn't feel anything, but after several hours of practice, he could feel a slight warmth in the palm of his hand. I feel something warm. You've done it? Now, try channeling it into your sword. Iwakatsu's growth as he learned to manipulate ki was remarkable. A week later, he was able to infuse his sword with energy and unleash the breath of the moon. The energy-infused slashes were much sharper than before, with a vastly improved range and power. Moon breathing, second form, pearl flower playing moon. The continuous slashes, imbued with energy, swept across a wide area, their power rivaling that of when he was a demon. Amazing! Goku said excitedly. Just learning ki can make such a difference. However, Iwakatsu was not satisfied. It's still not enough. In comparison to Yoriichi's breath of the Sunday. Are you talking about Yoriichi again? Piccolo said in shock. Even if you turn back into a human, you'll still be thinking the same thing. Gancho fell silent. Piccolo was certainly right. The strengthening of spirit continued. As Gancho's control of his ki improved, his existing techniques became more and more powerful. The continuous slashes imbued with energy mow down enemies with a range and power incomparable to anything before. Moon breathing, sixth form, eternal solitary moon, eternal. The vertical slash, strengthened by ki, was as beautiful as a waterfall of moonlight, yet deadly. Moon breathing, 16th form, moonbow, broken moon. The power of his ki made the powerful slash, strong enough to split the ground, even more powerful, and its path was as beautiful as a rainbow. The days of training continued. Having mastered the manipulation of ki, Iwakatsu finally graduated from training in normal gravity and began training in a gravity chamber. Even in 10x gravity, he was able to strengthen his body with the power of ki and perform the moon breathing technique. Moon breathing, 9th form, falling moon, multiple faces. With movements as light as a dance defying gravity, crescent moon slashes rained down like rain. It was proof that his control of his ki had reached the limits. That's amazing, Gancho, Goku said in admiration. You can now train at the same level as us. Yes. It's all thanks to learning the power of ki. Iwakatsu felt a sense of fulfillment. Human limitations are insignificant in the face of ki. But that wasn't all that was on Gonkatsu's mind. He had spent hundreds of years alone seeking strength as a demon. But he felt fulfilled now, in a way that couldn't be compared to back then. He strongly felt that he had only been able to reach this state because he had friends who helped him grow together. There was certainly a height there that he would never have been able to reach alone. Chapter 11, Farewell. As the setting sun began to paint the western sky a deep crimson, everyone gathered in the courtyard of Capsule Corp. The device in Bulma's hand had been flickering ominously for some time. The distortion in space-time is stabilizing, Bulma muttered as she checked the screen of the device. But is this really okay? Gonkatsu nodded quietly. His expression had changed dramatically over the past few months. The coldness he had shown when he was a demon and the hesitation he had felt immediately after returning to human form had vanished, and now his eyes were calm, yet filled with a strong will. What Bulma handed him was a complicated device shaped like a wristwatch. This is a space-time travel device I made. I analyzed the distortion in space when you appeared here and have already pinpointed the coordinates of your original time and place. However, the energy is only for one way. In other words, if you return to your original world, you will never be able to come back here again. Are you sure you want to go back? Hearing this question, the eyes of everyone gathered turned to Iwakatsu. They didn't criticize or try to stop him, but simply watched over his decision. As Iwakatsu received the device, he felt its weight. It wasn't just the weight of a machine. This device represented a break with everything he had built here. I have a connection that must end. His eyes held a light of quiet, yet unwavering, determination, unlike his previous obsession with martial arts. His experiences in this other world had given him a new reason to fight. Goku took a step forward. Iwakatsu, you can stay with us. You already have a place here. Iwakatsu's heart wavered for a moment. This was certainly the first warm place he had ever found himself in. But he shook his head. I appreciate your feelings, Goku. But I am responsible for running away. The crimes I committed as a demon, the words I left behind without sorting out my feelings for my brother. I must settle everything. He turned to each of them one by one, first to Krillin and Shinshinyan. You all taught me the meaning of comrades. Strength doesn't just come from striving for the top alone. I have learned that there is strength in working hard with friends and supporting each other. I am grateful. Krillin scratched his head in embarrassment. It's not that big of a deal. He then shifted his gaze to Gohan. Son Gohan. Your gentle strength reminded me of something I had forgotten. The nobility of wielding a sword for those who must be protected, and the form of happiness that I had abandoned. It was as if I was looking at my younger brother. Thank you very much, Iwakatsu-san. I hope you do your best over there. Then he turned to Piccolo. Piccolo. Without the words you said, I would have continued to run away from facing myself. Thank you for showing me the way. Piccolo had a complicated expression on his face. You found your own path, he replied briefly. But if you're gone, I won't have anyone to train with. Iwakatsu also smiled sadly. Next, Gancho stood in front of Vegeta. There was a sense of tension and empathy between the two of them that was unlike any other. Vegeta. What is it? Your words and my sparring broke down the hardened spirit that had built up over the centuries. I am grateful. I was just beating up some guys I didn't like, Vegeta said, looking away, but his eyes never left Gancho. Gonkatsu continued, you two are probably imprisoned. Just like me, by a ghost called an entity that must be overcome. However, unlike me, you have someone to protect. Do not lose sight of that strength. Vegeta's shoulders twitched. For the first time, he looked directly at Gancho. His eyes were a mixture of surprise, a touch of annoyance, and understanding as a fellow warrior. I don't need you to tell me that. After spitting those words out, Vegeta crossed his arms again and fell silent. However, there was no doubt that the two of them, two people with solitary souls, were engaged in a conversation that went beyond words. Vegeta, Gancho continued. Your pride reminded me of something I had almost lost, my pride as a warrior. But now, your pride also shines for the sake of the one you love. That dazzles me. Vegeta didn't say anything, but Gancho didn't miss the slight trembling of his fists. Then, he finally turned to Goku. Son Goku. Iwakatsu looked again at the man before him. A man with boundless cheerfulness, yet peering into the depths of martial arts. Meeting him was the beginning of everything. Your boundless strength completely shattered my pride and centuries of attachment. If I hadn't met you, I would have remained an empty demon forever chasing the illusion of my younger brother. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Iwakatsu bowed deeply and sincerely, probably for the first time in his life. Goku tapped him on the shoulder. You look completely different from when you first came here, you look so much better. There was no malice in that smile. Do your best in your original world too. Ah, Iwakatsu said, looking up. Bulma called out, looking at the device. The distortion of space-time has reached its maximum. It's time. Iwakatsu attached the space-time travel device to his arm, and the device began to emit a pale blue light. Guys, These past few months have been the most amazing days of my life. Space began to distort. A vortex of light appeared around Iwakatsu. The light gets stronger and Iwakatsu's figure begins to blur. Farewell, my friend. With that final shout, he disappeared along with the light. All that was left behind was the gentle breeze and the Z warriors who saw him off. For a while, no one spoke. He's gone, Krillin muttered sadly. Yeah, but he'll be fine now, Piccolo replied. Vegeta snorted, glaring at the space where Gancho had disappeared. He's become a bit of a sweet guy, but he has some good eyes. Goku looked up at the endless blue sky and smiled with satisfaction. Night falls quietly, and the stars begin to twinkle in the sky. In another world, far away, a former demon is about to start a new life. The light he finds in this world will surely shed some light, even if only a little, on the darkness of his hometown.